Well, welcome to the Ginger and Chocolate Podcast. My name is Lindsay, and I'm here with my co-host Mike. How's it going, Mike?
Good morning. Doing well, Lindsay. Yeah, I'm
All
excited
right.
for today's show.
Yeah.
We got some. It's gonna be a fun one.
Mm-hmm. We have a special guest today, my teammate and friend Dave Mandelkern. How's it going, Dave?
Hey, good, Lindsay, Mike. How are you guys doing this morning?
Pretty good. It's early. It's an early
Yeah,
morning, but we're all up.
yeah.
Yeah,
We all made
exactly.
it.
So they say triathlon would be a lot more fun if they didn't start at 6 in the morning. But
I know.
But here we are, right?
yeah, here we are. Yeah,
It's the life we chose.
That's right. That's right. Yes, it's not that much of a hardship. We're used to getting up early if we need to for swimming or for racing. Um, what's the earliest either of you? So, David, what's the earliest you've ever gotten up for a race? Do you think?
oh my gosh. Uh, I am not an early morning person, so you're probably more likely to catch me going to sleep early in the morning than waking up early in the morning. Um, I don't know, probably about 3 a.m. or something to get started in a race, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Probably the same for me. I mean, depending on how far you have to drive or how much prep you got to do to get to the spot, right? Because it's never just show up and start racing. It's show up,
Yeah,
take a bus somewhere else to go somewhere that it's hard to park, wait
yeah,
with a lot of people, fill your air, do
yeah.
all the other stuff.
Stand in line at the porta potty for an hour. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
the
yeah.
other time honored tradition, right?
Yes, yes.
T0.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Absolutely. So, we wanted to talk to Dave today because he's done some amazing things with triathlon in terms of numbers and adventures. And so, just quickly, we'll say right off the top, Dave has done 200 races, which is a lot of races, and has done a race in every state plus the District of Columbia. So, every state in the United States
Hmm.
and 6 out of 7 continents. And we're going to talk a little bit why number 7 is being difficult.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so first of all, I want to know like when you started triathlon and why you started triathlon.
Yeah. This was a completely accidental and unexpected adventure for the past 25 years. It was born out of a midlife crisis of waking up one day and realizing I was turning 40 and it was time to get off the couch and do something more active in my life and not just sitting behind a computer screen all day long. And a bunch of my coworkers had finished a marathon with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society team and training program, and these were some of the least likely marathon runners you've ever seen. Like, one guy was like a big, heavy guy and ran the Napa Valley Marathon and successfully finished it. I'm like, man, if Stubbs can run a marathon, I can run a marathon. So I said, I'm going to sign up and do this marathon for my 40th birthday. Then my friend Rich was like, oh no, don't do a marathon. That's like way too hard. Sign up for a triathlon instead. It's much easier on your body. So, and that was the first lie. And then the second lie was, I'll be there with you every step of the way in the training. Of course, I didn't see him at a triathlon for like another 8 years or something. Uh, so anyway, that's what got me signed up for the team and training triathlon program in December of 1999. It's how I met our coach, Lindsay, Tim Sheeper. He was the
Mhm.
coach of team and training at the time, and that started this whole journey. And as Tim will tell you, I was one of the people he had pegged as a one and done triathlete. That when I started this, I could barely make it 25 meters across the pool without drowning, and there was I understand quite a betting pool going on in my first triathlon that whether I would drown during the swim or not, and and my wife was leading the betting pool on that, by the way. So and I still don't know which side she was on the bet. But anyway, so I completed that first one and I kept on going. And here we are 25 years later. And that's 200 finishes, by the way, of
Oh,
races out of about 205 or 206 starts. So the 5 or 6 DNFs were probably
mhm.
some of the better stories along the way as well.
So just for the listener, if you don't know what a DNF is, it did not finish. But that means that you only 5 or 6 out of 205 or 6 races is actually a pretty good is a
It's
pretty
pretty
good
good batting
number.
average, man.
Yeah,
Hmm.
It's
yeah.
almost
It,
batting a
it, it
thousand.
used to be a lot better until this year. I don't know. It's just kind of things have gone downhill. I don't know. Yeah.
Hmm. Is it an age thing? Is it a
I think it's a swimming thing. Most of my DNFs, 5 out of the 6 or 4 out of the 5, whatever it is, have been in a swim, and I'm
oh,
not the world's best swimmer. I'm also not the world's best cross-country skier. That's another interesting story in winter triathlon. That was one of the DNFs as well. Actually, that
Oh,
was a disqualification, not a DNF. So
tell us about that. Tell us about that
okay,
story.
so this is my part of my accidental adventures as I wound up in surprisingly, and as you know, Lindsay, since you've trained with me for many years, I am not exactly a podium finisher triathlete. I am a back of the pack age group triathlete, to put it kindly. And
Mm-hmm.
but somewhere along the line, I wound up having a few podium finishes, and then as you get older, this actually gets easier in terms of qualifying for things. And I wound up qualifying for Team USA in a number of disciplines like aquabike and aquathlon and duathlons and things like that, not in full triathlons. So that's harder to do. But winter triathlon is also one of the disciplines that there is a world championship race for, and that is running in the snow, biking in the snow on either a fat tire bike or a mountain bike with big
Hmm.
tires on it, and cross country skiing. And I am
Wow.
quite possibly the world's worst cross country skier. And nonetheless, I wound up in Anchorage, Alaska, part of the
Oh,
preparation for going to Antarctica. Wound up in Anchorage, Alaska at the USA Triathlon National Championships in 2023 at the triathlete triathlon. Somehow managed to not only finish that, but actually came in second in my age group, which was really kind of a stunner.
hey.
Um, and thus qualified for Team USA to go to Worlds last year in 2024 in Pragelato, Italy, which this is where it starts getting the red flags start waving. Pragelato is where they did the cross country skiing races during the 2006 Turin Olympics. And that should have
Hmm.
been like a major warning that this was going to be a substantially harder course than I was used to on the cross country skiing part of it. And a little known fact that it's actually not legal to take off your skis and run during the cross country ski course. Um, but I was actually making faster progress running, carrying my skis than I was skiing, and especially going down the hills and the ice and all this kind of stuff. And so, anyway, I was making good time until some official flagged me down at one of the loops and things saying, this is really not legal to do this, and so we're going to have to disqualify you in this race. So
Ah,
anyway, that was my disqualification at the Winter World Triathlon in 2024.
I didn't even, after all these years in triathlon, I didn't even know that that was a thing, the winter
Yeah.
triathlon.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat,
Surprisingly, yes.
actually.
There's lots of things in triathlon that people don't know about.
I've always wanted to, and it's on my bucket list to learn how to cross country ski. Um, I think of it in my mind as, somehow easier than downhill skiing. But I've heard that it's actually really kind of difficult and a really, really good workout.
Yeah, I think all of that is true. It also doesn't help. In my case, I grew up in Florida, in North Florida, so we did not have a whole lot of snow. Then I moved to
Oh,
California, and we do have some places up we can go up to Tahoe and ski and stuff like that. But in the Bay Area, we don't have a lot of snow on a daily basis. And
Hmm.
now, I live a fair amount of the time in Hawaii as well, and then also not known for its snow. Although on the Big Island, we do have the only snow in Hawaii of the top of Mauna Kea. But skiing has never been something, in ice and stuff has never been part of my natural habitat growing up and so forth. So I'm
right.
always the guy that when you're walking on an icy sidewalk, I'm the one holding onto the side of the building so I don't fall over and things. So that's why the idea of me being on skis is kind of like this definition of an unnatural act. Uh,
This is a total aside, but I lived in Washington, D.C. When a couple years out of college, and the building where my firm was had the worst, kind of steps for ice. They were like kind of wide and a
mm-hmm.
little bit flat. And then the staircase itself this is outside, very, very wide. So there was only, there was handrails, but they were kind of on one side or the other and you couldn't reach both. And it would just freeze over. And we would, for a little break, a little coffee break, we would all stand in the window and just take bets on people going down to see
Yeah,
who we thought
yeah,
was going to make
yeah,
it.
yeah,
And you'd
yeah.
find some that had the trick of holding on, like you're talking about, Dave, but they would still slide, but they would just kind of hold
Mm-hmm.
on underneath the handrail and go
Yeah,
on down. So
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's funny. Funny you mentioned Washington D.C. because I'll have a quick story about my brother. He was like you, Lindsay. He was working in Washington D.C. just out of law school, and he was walking home carrying his briefcase one day, and he slips on the ice, and his briefcase goes flying down the street and winds up getting hit by a bus in the middle of the street. You know, he was fine, but that was basically, he grew up with me in Florida and stuff, and that's when he decided. He got home that night and told his wife, "We're packing up. We're moving back to Florida.
Yeah.
We're not staying in D.C.
Done.
anymore."
Done with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. At some point I had the same thought. Like they have the weatherman had a saying out there. It's a mixed bag. We're expecting a mixed bag, which means kind of like sleet, rainish type stuff, and then it's going to freeze over. And one day I thought, if I hear mixed bag one more time,
Yeah.
I'm gonna time to move to California.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to hear. So let's see. Did you finish well, I guess you must have finished the 50 states in DC in advance of the 200 triathlons.
Oh
I
yeah.
know we just
Yeah.
celebrated 200.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. The fifth that was all done. That was 2008. That was the whole goal of
oh,
this thing. So, backing up a little bit on the story. So, as you both know, triathlon can be, shall we put it kindly, a bit of a self-absorbed sport. Uh,
A lot of
and
type A's,
so,
yeah.
one of the things I've tried to do while I've been doing this in many years is find ways to kind of give back while I'm doing this stuff. So it's not just about me going out and doing all this stuff. So the 50 by 50 by 50 challenge was to do 50 triathlons in 50 states by the time I turned 50. And so we finished that in 2008. It was also a fundraiser to raise $50,000 for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, Challenged Athletes Foundation, and World Team Sports. And so that's kind of been the start of my fundraising challenges that I do in triathlon. Going back to how I started doing this whole thing with team and training for the Leukemia and
mm-hmm.
Lymphoma Society. And so, so that started in 2003. I got the idea. I was hanging out with a bunch of marathon runners, and it's actually a thing in marathon. Talking about things that people don't know about, there is a thing in marathon to do a marathon in each of the 50 states, and there's two competing groups. One is 50 states in marathon, the other is 50 states plus DC in marathon. And I wound up in Havana, Cuba, through an interesting set of events, running the Havana Marathon with a bunch of these guys who had finished all 50 states in DC and were now going on to run all the world's capitals. And so we wound up doing this charity run in Havana, doing the Havana Marathon. And I was like, well, this is cool. I wonder if anybody has ever done 50 states in triathlon. And the answer was no. I couldn't really find anything. In fact, I wasn't even sure if there was a triathlon in each of the 50 states. And it turns out at the time, it required a fair amount of logistical planning because one of the states, North Dakota, only had a triathlon every other year as part of their states games, which is kind of like a little mini Olympic Games thing that they did. So I had to get special permission to enter that race as a non-resident of North Dakota. And they were like, "Oh, sure, you can do this. Just, haha. Don't get a podium finish or anything. Don't take anything away from any of our North Dakota residents, but we'll let you do this." So you were trying to do all 50 states for this charitable thing. And of course, sure enough, I show up at this thing, red flag flying. Number one, there is like, wow. I take my bike out of the back of the car, and the people there are, and this is at the Prairie Rose State Games in Minot, North Dakota, best known for its nuclear missile bases, by the way. And so I pull my bike out of the car, and the people there were like, wow, those are really funny handlebars on your bike. And my tri bike. And they're like, and what's wrong with your pedals? It's like, they're so small. And it was like they'd never seen clipless pedals before.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, this might be an interesting triathlon. And sure enough, I come in third overall or something. I got a podium finish in this race in North Dakota. So it was like, how embarrassing, right? And this thing, but it gets better because then 6 months later, I get this letter in the mail from the National States Games saying, "Congratulations, based on your podium finish in North Dakota, you've been you're now selected to go to the National States Games in Colorado Springs, Colorado." And I'm like, I can't pass this up. I have to go to do this thing. And so I'm there, and people were saying, "Well, where in North Dakota are you from?" It's like a very far west North Dakota, very, very far west. And
that's hilarious.
And then they asked me if I want to carry the North Dakota flag, and that's where I have to kind of call it off and say, like, no, I'm not going to carry the flag, but I'm just going to embarrass myself to a certain degree, not all the way, but anyways, that's my North Dakota resident story of doing the 50 states.
So when you got to the nationals, were there people who had tri bikes and things there?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
that
right.
was a much more real thing. Yeah.
So, out of all the states that you've done, what was your favorite state, non-California state? I just say that because
Hmm.
we all live in California, and
Yeah.
you know, um, non-California state race.
Well, uh, probably the one, the very memorable one is Alaska, just because they were so darn nice. And that's, I think, is sort of both doing the triathlon, which was the sourdough triathlon in Fairbanks, and going back and doing winter nationals many years later in Anchorage. It's like, I don't know what people think about Alaska, but it's just like my experiences there in the winter and in the summer have been just, everybody is so darn nice. And the triathlon, the sourdough triathlon, the race director was a guy named Bad Bob Baker. And I had this mental image of Bad Bob Baker's looking something like Yosemite Sam with
That's what I was
the
gonna
red,
say.
yeah,
Yeah.
the red hair and the mustache and all this kind of stuff. And we were going to meet him the night before the race. We were going to have dinner, pre-race dinner together, and welcome me to Alaska. And I'm in this restaurant looking around for, when's Yosemite Sam going to walk in? And this very nice red-haired guy walks in wearing a polo shirt from this moving and storage company that he runs and everything. And he was like nicest, most, non-offensive guy in the world, the least likely guy to be named Bad Bob
Bad
Baker,
Bob.
and so he was the race director for this thing, and they had just had this massive forest fire and up there, and it was supposed to be a half Ironman distance race. And unfortunately, the thing, they had fire trucks out there. I had tried to ride the bike course that day, and there was fire hoses across the road and smoke everywhere. And it was just like, man, this is going to be tough to navigate this thing. He was like, yeah, we were going to call this race off, but since you came all the way from California to do this thing, we felt bad about you making this trip all the way up here. So they rerouted the whole race into an Olympic distance race at a
That's
state
incredible.
park a little bit further north. Oh my God, it was just incredible. And then he was up all night sawing pieces of birch. In fact, let me grab this. I can show it to you right here. Don't kill myself. I've got this right here in my office. Here, I'll hold this up. This is what he made: the finishers
Oh,
medals for the sourdough triathlon in 2004. And he handmade and lacquered these, wrote everybody's name on them, varnished them and everything the night before the race, and had these all ready for everybody. So that
That's
was
so
Bad Bob
cool.
Baker's handiwork here. And
nice guy.
yeah, and so that was it. And there was a potluck meal. It was a post race meal. It was a potluck afterwards. There was all of maybe 30 people doing this triathlon. That's one of the things doing triathlons in all 50 states. You realize we're spoiled, or I don't know, spoiled or jaded or whatever you want to call it. In California, we have these races with 2,000 people in them and whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
you're lucky if you know anybody there. You know, other states like South Carolina and Arkansas and Alaska and stuff, they're lucky if they get 30 people to show up at a race and this stuff. And everybody knows each other because they've been racing against each other for all season and all year and multiple years in a row. So everybody gets together and shares a meal afterwards. And so it's a very different vibe than a California triathlon vibe.
I
Sounds
bet.
kind of, yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, it just seems like in other states, the triathletes there probably spend a good deal of their time explaining to people what a triathlon is.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's not quite the same degree of normalcy around the stuff that you have in the Bay Area, for example.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And even here, people think they only think it's Kona. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They just
Ironman is the same as triathlon, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
right.
Synonymous.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
that's even around here. I mean, I have to explain to a lot of people that, I do triathlons, and I've averaged like 8 triathlons a year, and they're like, "Oh my God, how do you do 8 Ironman a year?" It's like, well, no, actually, they're not all Ironman. So that's
Yeah.
yeah.
But you've done Ironman, right?
Yep, yep, yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, back in the day, here I get to go like old dinosaur mansplaining everything to you, Lindsay. But back in the day, on Team Sheeper, for example, where we train, just doing an Ironman used to be a BFD. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just doing one Ironman was amazing, and now it's like if you don't do an Ultraman or something, it's like you're
Yeah.
nothing on this team. So it's just the game has definitely been raised there. But yeah, no, I did an Ironman back in the day, and a couple of them actually, and so it's but I've kind of sworn it off because, and same with running marathons as well. The pain versus reward ratio is just not there anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
especially the training pain of doing that is just it takes a lot out of me at 66 years old now. It's just
Mm-hmm.
that's not one of the things that's high on my bucket list to do anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I had it on my bucket list. I did check it off, and I kept it on my bucket list because I was injured and I didn't have a tri bike when I did it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I thought I could have a better race if I had a tri bike and knew about my runner's knee and kind of protected that during training. But I'm actually kind of over it, because of
Yeah.
the same reason you're talking about. Like, I'm in a place in my life where I keep coming up with these little injuries, or, I broke my ankle, but then getting back
Hmm.
healthy has been all these different little things coming up, I think, from overcompensating. Um, and I'm kind of like, I just want to race and have fun. And Ironman for my body is not really in the cards right now. And
Yeah.
also for a time wise, I mean, it's a lot of time and I work full time. So
Hmm.
I'm
It's
kind of letting it
hard.
go.
I
Yeah.
mean, especially again, most of us out there doing this stuff are not getting paid to do these triathlons.
Right.
We're not making our living doing this stuff. We're doing this for fun.
Quite the
And
investment. Yeah.
yeah. And I have a lot of respect to Lindsay. For one of our teammates, we were up doing Ironman Tahoe, if you remember that
Hmm.
disastrous race up there in the
Hmm.
freezing cold. It was September in
That was a
Tahoe.
saga.
It
That was
was
a
it was
disaster.
snowing. And it was unbelievable. Like, people were coming out of the water, wearing their wetsuits onto the bike to try and get warm, kind of thing, and whatever. And one of our teammates got out there on the run. It was a 2-loop run, and he finishes the first loop on the run. His family is in there eating dinner in the restaurant. There's young kids there or whatever, and he just stops. He says, I am having, not only am I not having fun, whatever the opposite of fun is, this is what I'm doing right now. This is just not worth it. So he just stopped and said, I'm going to have dinner with my family. That is a lot more fun right now than whatever I'm doing. I give him a lot of credit for doing it. We're recognizing that we do this to have fun, not to
That's
torture ourselves, not because we're getting paid to do this or whatever. And
That's
if
right.
it's not fun, you shouldn't be doing it.
Right. It
yeah.
is a hobby. I mean, let's
Yeah.
be real.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Um,
That was Tahoe had what, a year of snow, a year of bears eating people's
Right. If the
nutrition,
fire,
and
the
a
fire and
fire.
everything. Yes.
so
Yes,
I was
exactly. It was just
registered the
like
fire year.
it was the cursed Iron Man, right? It's just like this.
I
Yes.
was registered the fire year, and we were up
Mm-hmm.
there the week leading up to it. And um, it was raining ash. It was just raining ash. And
Mm-hmm.
That's fun.
um, I have asthma, and I wasn't as prepared anyway as I should have been, and I was kind of going in with like, well, let me see what happens. Let me start the swim and see what happens. I mean, I might as well just go and start.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then we were sitting there and it was raining ash like the day before. And I was like, I'm not doing this race.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I didn't do it. And I don't think anyone did the race. I think they
No,
got
as
him
I
in the
recall,
swim and then
did
pulled
they?
him out of the swim.
Yeah, I think they called it off at the start of the swim or something. That's
Yeah.
they canceled the whole thing.
So,
And I think that was the end of Ironman Tahoe,
yep,
as I
that was
recall.
it.
Yeah.
It has
Yeah.
not been revisited
Yeah.
since.
Yeah.
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 Because
Yeah.
they did a weird thing too. They said, well, you can register for another one, but it has to be this year. And it was like,
Yeah.
well, it's
Right.
October
Yeah.
or something. Like, what are
Right,
you
exactly.
talking about?
Yeah, yeah. So I think it was like there was one option left, Ironman
Louisville,
Cozumel or
right,
something,
right, yeah.
Mexico
Right.
or something. That was it. It's like, great, okay. Yeah.
Because Arizona was a possibility,
Yeah.
except it was sold
Yeah.
out. And they were like, you can't do a sold
Yes.
out race. It
Yeah.
was like, well, you've got
Yeah.
one. And I do
Hmm.
know Heidi
Hmm.
Buttery and her father went and did
Yeah. Cozumel.
Cozumel.
Yeah.
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 Hmm.
Which has its
Yeah.
own challenges. She got some water somehow,
Hmm.
ice, something happened where she had the
Yeah.
Montezuma's,
Woo,
revenge
fun.
on
Yeah.
the day of
Yeah.
the race. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, those add to the challenges of doing a race, and been there and done that as well. I'm doing Ironman 70.3 Honu in the Big Island of Hawaii,
mhm.
with coming off of food poisoning and doing that. That's not the recommended pre-race training.
it's a
No.
tough one.
Yes,
I
yeah.
was going to ask you, Dave, what is your favorite distance for triathlon?
I guess honestly, I'm probably an Olympic distance guy.
Hmm.
Standard distance, international distance, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, that's kind of my sweet spot.
That is a nice one because it's, I mean, the sprint is over before you know it.
Hmm.
Ironman, like we know, is 6 months to a year investment time of training, and then
Yeah,
it's grueling. But
yeah.
that Olympic distance, just like I think I have to agree with you. I really like that distance.
Yeah, it's manageable. And I do the halves as well. It's manageable training wise. It doesn't disrupt your life tremendously or whatever.
Mhm.
But having something where you can actually train and still have a life is important. And I
Yes.
agree with you, Mike. It's like the sprints, and to me, I'm not a fast transition guy, and the sprints too much of an emphasis on transitions, and
Yes.
people joke and use this like I pull out my tablecloth for the transitions and have a little meal there, light the candles and stuff, and so fast transitions are not my strong suit. So Olympic distance kind of plays a little better to my strengths or my less weaknesses, as I say, in there, and
I'm with
and
you.
yeah,
The
and halves are
rushing.
good. Yeah, halves are a nice challenge. I haven't done a half in a couple of years because I had a kind of a disastrous experience at the. This is another great story of when I was trying. This was the first attempt at South America on the Seven Continents tour. Get back to your question eventually, Lindsay, about seven continents and 50 states and stuff. I do remember there was a question in there somewhere, right, that I'm supposed to
This is
answer.
all
Anyway,
conversation. It's all
so
good.
yes, so I'm doing Brazil. This is the Ironman 70.3 Brazil in Fortaleza, and it's hotter than hell and humid. It's probably like 90 something degrees and 90% humidity
Oof,
and
that's
windy in
brutal.
there. And it's a grueling swim, grueling bike ride, and the headwind coming back and 28 miles into a blasting headwind with heat and humidity. Then on this dead flat run with not a speck of shade on the run. So running a 13.1 mile run out there. It's a 3-loop run. Make it through 2 of the loops, coming into the third one, looking at my watch, calculating, okay, here's, I got about 2 kilometers left to go, 1.2 miles left to go on this race, calculating my finish time. I see the flags and the tents up ahead at the finish line, everything. The next thing I know, I'm waking up in the back of a Brazilian ambulance with a bunch of
Oh,
guys yelling at me in Portuguese, which I speak a little bit of, but not a whole lot. And there's bloody gauze everywhere that are trying to do a blood sugar test on me or whatever, trying to figure out. But I basically passed out. That's one of the 6 DNFs, and they're probably
Oof.
the only one that's not a swim DNF was the run DNF there. And I still to this day don't know exactly what happened, but I did not,
wow.
unfortunately, did not finish the race. And I can tell you, if you have to pass out at a race, it's definitely better to pass out just over the finish line than just before the finish line,
Oh my
because it
God.
definitely,
Yes.
yeah, definitely left a feeling of unfinished business out there in the half that I've done, 98% of it or something and didn't quite
Uh-huh.
get it done, then had to go back. And the next time in Brazil was an equally disastrous experience. It was a middle of a storm, and the swim. I missed the swim cutoff time. Again, I'm not the strongest swimmer in the world, and it was just like so incredibly bad on the swim that I didn't make it through the swim. Third time's a charm. I finished the Rio Triathlon in, I don't know, it was 2021 or 2022. It was just after COVID. It was races were just starting up again. Went down there, did this Olympic distance race, had a bike wreck in the middle of it and everything. So I managed to, in my own stupidity, it was a one bike crash in the middle of this race, and not even a great story to tell. I wound up hitting a curb and flipped off my bike. So they were trying to stop me from going forward. They were like, "Oh no, you're bleeding. You hit your head. You shouldn't do this thing." And we're like, no comprende, no comprende, on the run. It's like, it's like, so, finish this race. And again, one of the other rare podium finishes for me, but amazingly, I managed to finish that race and that finally checked South America off on the third try. So,
I was going to say, when
but
they're
It's the
trying to stop you,
persistence.
you're
Yeah.
probably like, I'm not coming back down here. This is my third time
exactly,
down
exactly.
here.
This is the third time. It's going to take more than a bike wreck to stop me from finishing this race. It's like, so anyway. So yeah. So anyway, back to the half Ironman distance race. That's the point of this thing is. So that was I think I've done one half since then, but that was kind of like, okay. And that was right before COVID. It was in November of 2019 or something when I had that bad half Ironman race. So I was going through this whole massive cardiac workups and CT scans and ultrasounds and stress testing and all this stuff to figure out why this happened. And then, of course, COVID hits and we're shut down for 2 years with no races. And then slowly trying to get back into racing again and figuring out what's going on. And so, anyway, it's just the half distance has kind of been a little bit challenging to get back into
Mm-hmm.
since then.
Mm-hmm. The
It's a big buildup too.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
one of the
it's
things I've
frustrating.
learned in this year as well is I certainly had some health issues this year as well, and I had a detached retina in September, and so and it's a funny thing happened on the way to USA Triathlon Nationals in Atlantic City this year, and instead of getting on a plane to Atlantic City, I wound up in an operating room at Good Samaritan Hospital in San Jose. That kind of screwed up my race schedule for the last quarter of 2024. And so I jumped back in. I tried to go down to Morro Bay and do the Morro Bay Triathlon in November just to get back in and say, you do this stuff. And I came with the realization that, you actually do have to train to do these races.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
As much as your spirit may be willing and your mind may be saying, "Oh yeah, it's muscle memory. I can just pull this thing off on muscle memory." It's like, no, you really do need to train a little bit to do these things. So that was another swim disaster.
I'm
Yeah.
equally slow in the transitions, and our team manager Mike Osman.
Hmm.
Anytime our coach talks about transition, Mike immediately looks over at me because I'm so slow. And there was a race, and I'm sure you were there, Dave, a long time ago, like 2010, 2011. The one down in Lake Almaden, they would have that one down there, like the
Mm-hmm.
Santa Clara,
Yeah.
that.
San
So
Jose International, right? Hmm.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, exactly. So I'm in transition and I'm doing my thing. This is T1, and I, Mike walks over to the edge of the fence by me, and he goes, "Are you gonna have a fucking cup of tea too?" And I was
Yeah.
like,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
"Maybe."
Yes. Yes. Yeah. That encouragement in transition from Tim and Mike is always amazing, isn't it?
Good
Can you
boost of
go any
spirit.
slower, Dave? It's like, yes.
And my favorite
Yes.
distance is the
Yes.
sprint distance, and
Hmm.
I just love it because I do have fast twitch muscles when I'm not injured. I'm definitely
Hmm.
better at just hammering something out. But my big downfall is that I'm not great at transitioning. And I've had a number of races where I've come in fourth place, but my time for swim, bike, run has been fast enough that I would have gotten like second place or first
Hmm.
place. But my transition time was like 8 minutes on a sprint,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which you can't have.
Yeah.
And so, if I could get those transitions down better, I'd probably do really well on at the sprint
Hmm.
level. So maybe that's something
Yeah.
I'll work on. Um,
Yeah, or you could just have my attitude, which is I don't really care. I just,
yeah, there's
I'll
that
just take
too.
the 8 minute transition times, and that's life. So I'm just having a good time out there. So I say I like to get my money's worth out of these races. So
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
Mike, what
I'm the
about
same
you?
way. I hate rushing through transition. So maybe that's why I've been drawn to like the half and full distance for a while, because it's just I mean, there's a lot more leeway in transition there. Sprint,
mm,
I can't be bothered to stomp out of my wetsuit in 5 seconds and run over and do this. I'm like,
mhm,
what's the rush? Where's the fun?
mhm.
What are we doing
Yeah,
here?
yeah, I'm with you,
Where's
Mike. Yeah,
where are the
yeah,
guys that are going to strip your wetsuit?
yeah,
It's like those don't
yeah.
exist.
Yes,
These
yeah.
shorter
Only an
races.
Iron Man, right?
Yeah.
That's yeah. Which is it's a nice luxury. You get
Oh
spoiled by
man,
that. Yeah,
it
yeah,
was so nice when
yeah,
we did Ironman
yeah,
Santa Rosa. I'd
yeah,
never had that
yeah,
before,
yeah.
and I'd had it once before at Vineman, I guess, but it was so organized and they were so fast with my
Hmm.
wetsuit. I was like, this is, I
Yeah,
wish I could have this always,
right.
always. It would
Yeah.
definitely help my sprint.
Hmm.
Um, so let's talk a little bit about the 200 triathlons. Did you set a goal for this, or is this something that just came about because you've just been racing a lot?
It just happened. Yes, exactly. It was not. That was not. Never the goal was never to do 100 or 200 or whatever. It's just kind of happened along the way. After doing the 50 states, the 100 kind of happened pretty naturally because obviously 51 of them were doing the 50 states plus DC plus doing other local races. Before you know it, you wind up you've done 100 races. Then you
Hmm.
keep doing this stuff long enough, and you know, again, as I like to say, I may not be the fastest guy out there, but I make up for what I lack in speed with endurance. So I do a lot of
Mm-hmm.
races a year, and so it's been an average of eight triathlons a year, plus other assorted and sundry duathlons, aqua bikes,
Hmm.
marathons, half marathons, whatever during the course of the year, and so that before you know it, you just keep doing this stuff long enough, you wind up pushing the 200 here, and so it just happens.
That's
It's
awesome.
called getting old, right? That's
Yeah, well,
yeah,
there's that.
yeah.
Um, I know that you did the multi-sport. I'm not sure what they called it in Nebraska. It was the multi-sport. Didn't you go with
Yes.
Tim, or was it Nebraska?
Omaha, yes,
Omaha.
last year.
Yeah.
Well, yes. So yes, that's the whole accidental. How did I wind up on Team USA? I've got my Team USA jacket on here and
Very
everything.
nice.
Yes, yes, very good. Again, least likely person to ever make Team USA, or like making a complete mockery of the sport of triathlon or whatever. But as it turns out, the older you get, kind of the less competitive this stuff gets, because there's fewer
Hmm.
people in your age group.
Again, the endurance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
endurance pays off, right? You survive long enough, good things happen.
Yeah.
And so I wound up first going to Irving, Texas in 2022 and doing kind of what some might call the more obscure disciplines in multi-sport, like an aquathon. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
which is swimming and running, and aqua bike, swimming and biking and duathlons and so forth. And so I signed up and I did, I don't know, half a dozen different little races like this there, and wound up qualifying for Team USA in some of these obscure things, and went off to Ibiza, Spain, and doing that. And then Ponte Vedra, Spain, for the sprint distance, super sprint actually, triathlon. And then I went to Omaha, Nebraska last year and qualified for a bunch of things again. And this is the USA Triathlon Multisport Nationals, and so that was fun. And I'll be heading off to Ponte Vedra, Spain again for Multisport Worlds in a couple of disciplines, and doing what am I doing this year? Sprint duathlon, standard distance duathlon, and aquathlon there. And then we'll be going down to Wollongong, Australia in October to do the standard aqua bike. And with Lisa Sheeper, one of your guests a few weeks ago, very excited. I know she was very excited about this. We put together a mixed team relay, which is a super fun new event in triathlon. We have 2 men and 2 women each doing a super sprint triathlon. So it's something like 250 meters of swimming, 5 kilometers of biking, and about a 1.2 kilometer run. So it's over before you've even figured it out. And so this is where you do like zero transition, no wetsuits, no bike shoes. You wear your running shoes on the bike if you're trying to do this fast. It's just like boom, 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 you're done. And
so let me ask you a question with the relay. So would you do your whole super sprint and then hand off to your teammate?
Exactly. Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So person one, and they alternate whether it's male first or female first, depends on the year. So they flip back and forth. So we did male first when we did this in Omaha, and now in Wollongong, the next year will be female first. Goes off and does the swim, does the bike, does the run, then tags off. The next person jumps in the water, does the whole thing, finishes the run, tags off, and then the last person crosses the finish line.
Very cool.
Oh, cool.
That's cool.
It's super fun. They started this at the Olympics. I encourage everybody to try it. It's a blast, even though it doesn't seem like it's much of a workout. This is one of the other dirty little secrets I found is whatever the distance is, whether it's super sprint or Ironman, these things are all hard because you're putting out 100% energy for whatever the distance is. So, I mean, it's like, I think the goal, if I've got this right, finally, after many years of doing this stuff, it's you don't leave any gas in the tank. You put everything out into the race, whatever the distance is. So they're all hard.
Yeah. Good point.
This is why I find the Olympic distance so hard, is because people are really going fast, but it's a little bit, you know what I mean? It's more of a stretch than just a sprint distance. They're going fast for to me, it seems like quite a bit. So the Olympics where I've blown up a couple of times because I can go hammer on a sprint and I get sucked into what other people are doing. And it turns out they have more endurance than I have. And so,
and Olympic distance is where you actually have to start worrying about things like hydration and nutrition and things. You can't just kind of gut it through on, I had a banana last night, so I can go out and do a sprint distance triathlon.
Exactly.
Which that's why it's my kind of thing, because I'm not a great planner with that kind of stuff. Okay. So what was your 200th race?
That was actually number 2. This is again, you plan and then things kind of blow up. It was supposed to have been at the USA Triathlon Nationals in Atlantic City. That got blown up because of my detached retina, so that didn't happen. So instead, I wound up after I recovered and was able to go do the Cal Barathlon sprint distance race in Berkeley.
Oh, cool.
It's a collegiate race, which is another fun thing to do. If you've never done a collegiate race, I highly encourage it because it's a lot of fun. And I've done several of them. Stanford Triathlon is another local collegiate race we do. It's fun to see all the college teams out there.
Agreed.
People singing their fight songs and cheering and all this kind of stuff. And I actually had the good fortune. I again doing the 50 states. Alabama, the first trip to Alabama got thunderstormed out, so I couldn't do the race because they canceled it due to thunderstorms. And let me tell you, going all the way to Fort Rucker, Alabama to do the Fort Rucker Tin Man, only to have it canceled due to thunderstorms is like not a great weekend trip. But so the next time through was, again, Alabama being one of those states that's a little bit triathlon challenged, not having a lot of races to choose from. USA Triathlon Collegiate Nationals were going to be at University of Alabama the next year. So I wrangled my way into being a chaperone with the Stanford Triathlon team and actually went along as a driver to drive the van for them and stuff like that, and got to do the race there as part of the Stanford Triathlon team, collegiate team. So that was a lot of
Oh,
fun
cool.
doing that. And yeah, it was great because it also was a spring football game weekend or something. So there
Oh,
was a ton of people on the campus, and the run was right through the middle of this, red brick building campus and everything. And
That's cool.
people were along the way were cheering you on and everything, and they're like it was a football game kind of thing or whatever. So it was a very cool experience, and
mhm,
you had these college kids from all over the country there doing this thing. So again,
mhm.
highly recommend doing at least one collegiate race in your life. It's a lot of fun.
Totally agree with that. The first, well, I guess the first try I did in this chapter of my triathlon life was a Triton Man down in San Diego, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
that's their like college team preseason race
Mm.
for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like in February. Um, it's early on, so I agree totally with you, Dave. The energy that the kids brought there was so fun to see.
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. I love it when you are in a race where there's a lot of spectators too. For some
Mm-hmm.
reason, it's fun. I mean, it does give me energy. I don't know about you, but the clapping and the cheering and
Yep.
stuff does definitely.
And this is one of the challenges in triathlon. They're trying to make this a spectator sport, and have things on TV or whatever. And I don't know that it's ever going to happen. Triathlon is not a great spectator sport. As my friend Jane Williams, who wrote the book Slow Fat Triathlete, which is a great read, by the way, if you ever want to read a funny triathlon book or whatever. She summed up very well. Triathlon is a two thermos sport for spectators. You have one
Yes.
Right.
thermos of coffee in the morning to begin with, and then a thermos of margaritas to stand out at the finish line at the end. And that's the best way to see a triathlon, and it's actually miserable. My wife has stopped coming to every triathlon. She still comes to some of them. If we're going to an interesting foreign country or something like that, she'll come along. But she's kind of given up on most of the local races and
Mhm,
stuff. But it is
mhm.
it is absolutely miserable to be a spectator. And my litmus test is always triathlon is not really going to be a spectator sport until you actually see spectators there that do not have a relative doing the race.
Right.
True.
Is anybody ever going to show up and watch a triathlon when they actually don't know anyone that's doing the race?
Right,
Well, the
right
one I
outside of the
saw,
Olympics, right, where
Yeah,
yeah,
people are just
yeah,
like, "What's this? Hey, I'll get
yeah,
tickets for that."
yeah.
hmm and the very first race that they had in Oakland, the Oakland Tri, the very, very
Hmm.
first Oakland Tri, our team went and did that. You were probably there, Dave.
I was there. Yep, yep.
I loved. I mean, of course, it was my favorite race ever because all the volunteers were local volunteers, and so
Hmm.
triathlon is definitely a non-black sport. There's less than 1% of triathletes are black, and
Yes.
I had clapping and cheering the whole freaking as soon as I got out of the water, the
Hmm.
whole course because people would see me coming, the volunteers or people that just
Yeah,
came outside to watch because they were like, I don't even know what this is, kind of thing.
yeah,
And they'd see me coming and they would just
yeah,
start screaming, and it was the best.
That's awesome.
yeah.
It was so fun. It was fun to be representing, triathlon and,
Hmm.
showing people what's possible. But I mean, all the way
Yeah,
around Lake Merritt, it was just like, woo,
yeah,
keep
yeah,
going, keep going.
yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah.
Well, yeah, and it was a great race. It's a shame they're not doing that one
I
anymore. As a
know.
whole, that's a whole nother what the death of local triathlon races. That's a whole nother
Hmm.
subject for a different podcast. But
Mhm.
Yeah, it
anyway,
really is.
yeah, that was a great race. And Lindsay, you touched on a really important topic, which is one of the things that I'm involved in now is trying to increase diversity in the sport as well.
Mhm.
So I'm actually an ambassador for USA Triathlon, and one of our one of the big three that we try and do is increase the diversity of athletes and get people who are traditionally historically not represented in triathlon, which a lot goes back to swimming. And
Yeah.
so, as you may know, as one of the founders in the Beyond Barriers Athletic Foundation, which is trying to get underserved youth involved in swimming, subsidize swim lessons, get them into the water, get them doing water polo, get them doing triathlon, whatever goes after you've learned how to swim, it opens up a whole lot of doors and a whole lot of opportunities for kids that, never thought that swimming was for them. They just, was like
Mhm.
swimming. That's not something that my kind of people do. That's something that
Yeah.
those country club people do. And
Right.
Hmm.
it's really breaking down the historic barriers to swimming,
Mhm.
and then getting more kids involved in triathlon is a big effort in there. And so, yeah, maybe someday it will be a bit more diverse than it is
Mhm.
today.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that would be nice. We're coming up against the end of our time, but I want to hear a little bit about the about doing a race on each continent. Maybe you can share a little bit about each one, and then I want to hear about this last one that you're still
Sure,
trying to write.
the great white whale of triathlon
Yeah.
is doing the one in Antarctica. So yeah, so this came after 50 states. Like, okay, what's next after I did that? And it was like, okay, doing all the world's capitals sounded a little bit too hard. So I said, well, maybe let's start with just doing one on each continent first. And turns out to be fairly straightforward to do. So I knocked out Australia, Thailand, the Laguna Phuket Triathlon, which is a really fun race, and
Mm.
the London Triathlon. They made a big deal of the fact that I was doing these things. They actually had the TV crew following me around, and just an interesting aside. Gordon Ramsay, the celebrity chef, was doing the
Mm-hmm.
race. And a little known fact, he's a triathlete, and his kids are triathletes as well. And so
Yeah.
he had this whole charity team of people doing this stuff. So we're doing the film briefing there for the TV crews before the race and everything. And they were like, and this is the first I'd heard that Gordon Ramsay was going to be one of the other featured triathletes in this thing. And I think we have a vision of Gordon Ramsay based on Hell's Kitchen and kind of the cooking shows that we see here. This kind of guy is kind of like a screaming, profane, loudmouth, not very pleasant person. And so they say, oh, okay, yeah, you're going to be featured along with Gordon Ramsay. We're going to be filming this thing. And I'm like, Gordon Ramsay, oh my God, is he going to be screaming profanities at me? And they were like, what do you mean? He's like the nicest, most revered person in the United Kingdom. He's this charity icon that raises all this money. Things. I'm like, whoa, this is not the Gordon Ramsay that we know in the United States. So anyway, so that was very, very cool having this film crew following me around the London Triathlon. And then Africa was great, doing in Port Elizabeth, South Africa, doing the race there, back to the kids and the spectators and stuff. So they're doing this race. It was an Olympic distance race out there, and I don't know, we're out in the middle of nowhere in South Africa, and running. These kids are playing soccer in the middle of the street as we're running through, and so going through. And again, I am by no means the fastest triathlete out there. And I don't think I was dead last, but I was certainly in the bottom things. And basically, these kids are playing soccer, and they start running after me while I'm on the run out there. And they're like yelling something that's kind of like "loser, loser, you're last in this race," kind of thing, whatever. So not quite your usual spectator sport experience here, but all in good fun. So anyway, and so knocked out 6 out of the 7 triathlons, and so Alaska there is no triathlon in Alaska, and so I've been trying for 5 years now, 6 years, interrupted by COVID, trying to get this thing done, tagging along with there's actually 3 marathons a year in Antarctica. And so I'm trying to tag along with one of the marathons. We've been working with the White Continent Marathon folks out of Minneapolis to do this. And every time we get very close, and there's a whole, and I'm insisting that we do this the right way. This isn't just a one-off vanity project. It's got to be a real triathlon, open to members of the public to sign up and do this thing, that we do it with environmental permits. And this is, an official event, not an unofficial hop off the plane and, stick your toes in the water and get back on the plane and leave kind of thing. And so it's been challenging to get the permits. And so 2 years ago, we were very, very close, in fact, literally ready to get on the plane and fly there to do this stuff. And we had the permits in hand, and they canceled them because they were worried about the bird flu, the avian influenza, and that we were going to be vectors carrying the virus to the penguins and the skua in Antarctica, and which is like, it very quickly became an expert in bird flu after that. But I won't tell you that was probably not a real issue. But nonetheless, we weren't able to get the permits. And then the same thing this year. There's things that are held up in the permits and the bureaucracy. It did not happen again. We had applied for the permits, and they came back in January and said, well, you had to apply 6 months in advance for the permits. Your application was postmarked 5 months in advance, so we can't issue it for another month. And by that time, we've lost the weather window in Antarctica to do this thing. So I'm still hoping at some point we'll get to do a short swim. I'm figuring if we can do 200 to 400 meters in the water, I'll be very happy. We have a 10-minute safety cutoff time for the water. It's going to be roughly freezing, around 32 degrees plus or minus in there for the swim. That's going to be the challenging part. Then sprint distance bike, a 20-kilometer bike ride, and then a 5-kilometer run. So that's the idea, is basically have a sprint distance triathlon in Antarctica.
That's cool.
Amazing.
One of these days I'll get it done. I'm not stopping yet.
No, of course not. You got plenty of time to do it.
Yep.
And hopefully,
I've got all the equipment. I've got the gear set, and this is talk about the wetsuit, an 8mm thick wetsuit to swim in with a polypropylene underliner and pre-charging it with hot water to get the thing warmed up and everything. That actually works. So I did a test swim in Lake Michigan in Chicago in the middle of the winter. It was a little bit warmer than Antarctica. It was only 36 degrees, so it's balmy in comparison. But that worked. I was able to swim for 15 minutes without freezing to death. And then the bike is too small to The plane is too small to have a full size bike box on it, so we have to use folding bikes for the bike. So I've got like a Bike Friday folding bike that's modified to be a mountain bike with big knobby tires on it and everything. So that's the folding bike for the bike leg on it. And then running is just like a winter triathlon run. You just have to wear shoes that are good traction in snow.
Yeah.
Well, awesome.
That's
I mean,
incredible.
it is incredible. And I really appreciate, you know, your sharing with us your all your experience with the sport and sort of how you've been a great ambassador for the sport, which, you know, the sport has grown. I'm sure I've seen it grow, and I've only been doing it for 15 years. And I've not done anywhere near 200 races, but
it goes up and
people
down,
like,
by the way. It's interesting.
yeah.
We're in a recovery spurt now. I think you were
Oh,
in the sport at the time. This is in the early 2000s. Triathlon was crazy. Just sign up for Wildflower or something. You literally had to be at your crude and primitive web browser at the time at midnight to sign up for this race because it would sell out in 45 seconds. You know, that type of
yes,
thing.
yes.
That was I think the peak of triathlon in 2005 or something like that. You had to do this stuff. Then it kind of went through this downturn, and it was like relatively easy to sign up. And then there's been a lot of consolidation of races, and local race directors, I think, have found it very challenging, especially through COVID. A lot of them got wiped, and it's just very sad. But it's starting to come back now. Numbers are going back up. Races are starting to come back again. So hopefully we're on a little bit of an upswing now in triathlon. So I've got to say, by the way, on the 7 continents thing, again, this is also part of my charity fundraising thing. This is called the 7x7 Challenge, 7x7challenge.org. If anyone's interested in looking at my website on this stuff, my goal is to raise 49,000 7 by 7 49 $49,000 for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society by doing this. I'm about halfway there now in terms of the fundraising, and hopefully by the time I get Antarctica done, I'll have finished the rest of the fundraising.
Yeah,
And
we'll have the
put,
links in our show notes for everyone to check that out and see if
That'd
they
be
can
great.
contribute.
Thank you.
One
well, I
question
think
I
we do.
have
Oh, sorry.
before we go
Yeah.
is what advice would you give someone who is interested in the sport but maybe intimidated by, you know, people with
Yeah.
bikes that look like spaceships and the type A personalities and just the
Yep.
mystique of triathlon?
Yeah. Just don't worry about it. Just jump in and do it. So this is something. It's a great Kurt Vonnegut quote that I love on this thing, which is, you know, he was a young man. He was 15 years old and was working on an archaeology dig and was, you know, having the usual questions from the archaeologist. So, well, you know, what do you do? What are you about? Do you play sports? You know, what's your favorite subject and so forth? And he was like, well, I don't do any of that stuff. You know, I play the violin and, you know, I do theater a little bit and I play the piano. I used to take art classes. And the archaeologist was like, wow, that's amazing. And Kurt Vonnegut said, well, I'm not any good at any of them. And then the response was, I don't think being good at things is the point of doing them. I think you've got all these wonderful experiences with different skills, and it teaches you things. It makes you an interesting person, no matter how well you do them. So that's kind of the advice I've taken into triathlon, which is you don't have to be the best triathlete to have a lot of fun doing this. You just have to go out there and have great experiences, meet a lot of very wonderful, interesting people, and train with a lot of people. You've spent time with Lindsay. I've really enjoyed, you know, all the time we spent running and talking and things like that. It's been great, and you know, it makes you a very interesting person, no matter how well you do these things.
I totally agree, just for the enjoyment of it. And I think that's why Lindsay and I get along. And Dave, I feel like we get along because I have the same attitude. It's that I think the stories are more interesting of the people who aren't as good who come to the sport. I mean, the pros, it's about time, you know, and effort and wins and stuff. But for age groupers and other people like us, amateurs, the stories of why we get there is probably the most fascinating.
Absolutely. To me, I mean, yeah, the pro triathletes are amazing, and you watch somebody finish an Ironman in less than 8 hours or something. It's like unbelievable, right? The athletes are there. But to me, the most interesting part of watching an Ironman is the people that are scraping to finish by the cutoff time, and they're in there. It's midnight. The clock is counting down, and these people have been struggling for 17 and a half hours out there, you know, all day long. And it's like, oh my gosh, you know, are they going to make it? They have minutes to spare to get that last couple hundred meters in, and you know, that is amazing. Watching those people and their stories. That's what this sport is really all about. Those are the interesting people at the race.
Well said. Well said.
Definitely. Well said. I think with that, we will wrap it up. Stay with us for a minute, Dave. I'm going to say goodbye to our listeners, and then we'll end it. But okay. Thanks so much, folks, for listening. And if you like the show, please subscribe and give us a little review, preferably something positive. If you have that, you can say whatever you need to say. Just say it with your chest. But we're hoping for a high number of stars and positive reviews on whatever platform you listen to your podcasts. And any last words, Mike, before we go?
No, just Dave, just enjoyed having you and what you bring
Yeah.
to the sport and how you taught us. It's not necessarily about the time. It's about how you give back and about learning about the other people join you in the sport.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Well said, Mike. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Lindsay. It's been a pleasure being with you today.
Thanks. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.